Now, recording is started. So, Barry, I firmly believe that health is more than what you eat and drink. I firmly believe that health is diverse, dynamic, and deliberate. I firmly believe that health is not possible under the hand of one practitioner, one discipline, one medicine, or one part of healthcare. I firmly believe that health is a person's primary responsibility and must be person-specific. I firmly believe that health must be conversed on a physical, chemical, emotional, mental, spiritual, cultural, racial, and various other undetermined levels. I firmly believe that there must be a better way than our current status quo. So, Barry, that is the reason why I started this podcast. And thank you so much for joining us. For anyone who doesn't know you, I'm just letting you know that you're in for the ride of your life. Barry is going to take you through some challenging stuff. But as a way of maybe starting slowly, Barry, just give us some understanding. How have you got to this point in terms of your understanding of health?
As a Dr. Travis Tell, first of all, thank you very much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And the statements that you made just there were like, you know, we're on the same page, we're in the same book. I totally agree with everything you said. So I think kind of like moving forward, what we will discuss tonight will be absolutely based on the statements that you made. How did I get to this point in my life? Sure. How long did you say we had? 40 minutes? I don't know. How did I get to this point? Sure.
Make it bullet point quickly. Let's go. Bullet point.
Okay, quickly. I was born and raised in Dublin, hence my accent. Being Irish, I will try a couple of things with no guarantees. And the first thing I'll try is not to curse anything in the next 40 minutes, but there's no guarantees. I'll do my best not to get drunk, and I'll do my best not to start a fight with anybody. So now I've just generalized my Irishness for you. Let's move on. Like, I grew up in Dublin. The first thing I did is I studied computer science, believe it or not, and I have a degree in computer science, but I hated the office environment. I just couldn't deal with it. I couldn't take.
Barry, just hold on for a second. I'm going to mute everybody and then just unmute yourself, okay?
Okay.
There we go, Barry.
Okay, am I back? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, cool. So I started off, I actually studied computer science and I just hated it. So my passion was to be a chef. I've always wanted to be a chef. So I became a chef. And you know, what I loved about it was the lifestyle, the creativity, the artisticness of it, the aggression of it, the way chefs curse, the way chefs party. I absolutely loved it, but it's a young man's game. So somewhere along the line, I actually realized also that I wanted to be a shaman, believe it or not. And so I really believed in earth energies, earth medicines. And
so when you talk shamanism, what is shamanism to you?
Shamanism to me is working with the earth, working with the energies, the vibrations of the earth, working with plants, working with people's energies, working with love, okay? Working like the exact opposite of what pharmaceutical medicine is. So if you don't know what shamanism is and you know what pharmaceutical medicine is, it's the exact opposite. So that's what shamanism is.
Let's make this careful. Does that mean that you're anti-medicine?
Do I get myself into trouble? Yes and no. I think we'll answer that more as we go through. But yes, and no. Like, the only thing I think medicine has on any other form of healing, whether it's energetic healing or homeopathy or herbal medicine or chiropractor, is their ability to control pain. That's it. That's it. Their pain medication is magnificent and no one wants to be in pain. But when it comes to any other type of healing, any other types of kind of like taking care of a person, taking care of the body, taking care of the holistic body, the mind, the emotions, the mental, the spiritual, allopathic medicine falls very, 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 very short.
So moving on quickly, how did you get into iridology?
Okay, so for me, the natural calling then was for herbal medicine. So I wanted to be a herbalist. So the school I studied herbal medicine with in Europe, their diagnostic tool is iridology. So when I rocked up to be an herbalist, I had no clue what iridology was. I was, well, what the is this? Like what? Like, sorry, what? Excuse me. So then when I got into it, I love it. It's like, sure. Like, kind of like I used it in good and bad circumstances. And, at times, like there was times kind of like when I became very good at it, that it was my chat up tool in bars. So I'd go into bars and I'd be talking to girls and I'd be chatting them up, looking in their eyes. Oh, you've got daddy issues. Oh, fantastic. It's a good thing I'm so much older than you. So it's kind of like,
Very.
So then I got more serious.
Listen, I've got a lot of people on this talk that are interested in the good aspects of iridology, not how to pick up women in a bar. Come on, Barry. Come on.
Okay, no, the good aspects is that Dr. Travis, where I work very much from an emotional and mental aspect of healing. Okay,
let's stop for a moment. How would you give a Google definition of iridology?
Google definition of iridology and how I do iridology are possibly two different things. So the Google definition of iridology is the study of the iris, the colored part of the eye, to determine your health. Okay, so it's mapped out in a similar way that reflexology is mapped out. But the way I use it far more like energetically. So I'm also sort of like trained in Reiki, and I've done bits and pieces and training in metaphysics. So I incorporate that into my iridology, because like I look at every organ in the body as having emotions. So, we'd all know the heart, it's love and hate, but every organ has emotions. Like the kidneys are fear and passion. The liver is anger, generosity. The pancreas is bitterness and sweetness. So you work for the emotions of that. And that's where I kind of like work more than kind of like the Google aspect of kind of like if you define what iridology is, because it's a science and an art. And to me, there's far more of an art. It's like, to me, it's like I'm doing it 18 years. So every time I meet someone, and every iridology consultation I do, I think I get better because there's something more I understand. There's something more I see. But like, I also use it very intuitively. So, and sometimes kind of like, I don't even have to take a picture of people's eyes and look at them on the screen. I can just deal with people through the color of their eyes, through the way they hold themselves, through the energy in that person. So kind of like I do, that's how I use iridology.
Barry,
so
just a quick interjection, yes. And someone's asked this, and I think it's a nice question. Is iridology applicable to animals? And I know that you're a cat lover. So do you look in your cat's eyes, tell them what's wrong with them?
Yes, but I'd only ever do it under the guise of with a vet, because I don't know enough about an animal's anatomy.
Good.
So I remember trying to take pictures of cats' eyes in the past. I thought I'd write a book. And I know you also like cats yourself, and trying to chase cats around a room to get a picture of their eyes is a bloody difficult thing to do. You might as well try and bath them. So it's kind of like, it's a hard one.
But let me hone in on what you said, Barry. You spoke about emotions are in the body. Each organ has emotions. Yes. Really hone in on this. How does this work for the people on the call? How do they start to recognize that emotions are not just in the head, emotions are actually in their body?
Okay, if we go back to the head, emotions are processed in the head. So that's a good place to start with. So emotions are, to me, the underlying root cause of the vast majority of ailments that we have. Look, if you get run over by a bus, you get run over by a bus and you're probably shattered. But kind of like most chronic ailments come from an imbalance within your emotions. So take, for example, instead of using all of them, let's work in the kidneys, because the kidneys are kind of like, they're associated with fear and they're associated with passion. So the kidneys are also kind of like on a physical level, it's where you process the waste product of protein synthesis. So obviously a really good diet is important, but the emotions of fear. And like, we live in a world that is saturated by fear. Everything is fear. Like Johannesburg, where I don't know where most people are coming on from, but Joburg, living in Joburg is quite extraordinary in terms of the level of fear of being hijacked, in terms of electric fences, in terms of about security around the you know, around your houses, the fences on your doors and your windows. So if you also look at your kidneys as being your batteries, your chi, all of this completely depletes your life force, completely deplete your life force. So working with kind of like the emotion of fear is going to be key. It's going to be very, very important. So what is the emotion that opposes fear? It's actually passion. So you ask people kind of like in consultation, what is your passion? And so many people have no clue. They actually don't know what their passion
I'm
is.
sure if you
Like
ask that question, Barry, you get crickets in the background. People just sit at you blankly, because what I understand of how the mind works, the mind is either avoiding something or pursuing something.
Correct.
Most people are
Correct,
trying to
100%.
avoid something that they have never even thought about what they're pursuing.
Like Dr. Travis, this is so correct, because to me, the most important thing in this life is happiness. Okay. And if you were to ask me like the question, what is my definition of health? I would give you a one-word answer, and that is honesty. That is my true definition of health. And if you're honest to yourself, you're honest with your emotions, with your soul, with your spirit, with your mentality.
I wish
with
at this
everything.
point we could have a raise of hands. How many people are honest with themselves, or honest with their partner, or honest with their doctor? Man, that is a tough one.
Honestly, Richard, like that's one great thing about iridology, because people come in and they just talk such cack. Oh no, my diet's magnificent. And I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I do yoga, and then I go and I have my green tea and my green vegetable juice, and then I go for a run, and then I do some meditation, and your eyes suggest completely the opposite. I don't know where you're at or where you're getting that from, but Jesus Christ, what is wrong with you? You are telling lies. And like kind of like, you know, an awful lot of people don't take the way I consult. Okay, they actually just find it a little bit too much, because when it comes down to honesty, Dr. Travis, it's taking responsibility for yourself. It's taking responsibility for everything you do. Now, we mentioned diet earlier, and diet is everything. Diet is the food you consume. It's the television you watch. It's the socialist media that you plug yourself into. It's your gossip. It's your friends. It's your magazine. It's everything, because we consume all of that. Like, I know so many people who will go and they'll make an absolutely delicious meal, like really full of nutrients, full of love, put all this energy into it that they're going to really enjoy it. And then they'll sit down in front of the television, and what they consume is murder and corruption and rape and killing and all of that. And that's the energy that's now coming into their body, because that's what they're consuming. Because our first taste in life is with our eyes. It's what we see. So it doesn't matter how good and how healthy and how nutritious and how much love we put into our food, if we do not take the time to actually eat with that love and with that compassion for our food that the earth has given us, I think we're on a losing battle there. We think we really, really, really are.
Let me dive in, Barry. Let me dive in. How do you see this in someone's eye? Can you give, I mean, because I know people are interested. What are you looking for in the eye? I'm going to bring my eye
there's two
close to the camera.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Ah! Oh, the devil itself just appeared. Whew, that's awful. My God, I'll never do that again. I'll never speak to you. My God. There's obviously kind of like, when we come to the eye color, there's most iridologists would recognize 3 eye colors. Okay, so it's brown, it's blue. Brown.
How many eye colors? How many eye colors?
It's a number between 2 and 4.
All right.
Okay, 3, as you'd find in the garden. Or there's one behind you, the number 3. Okay, so there's 3 eye colors, and so there's brown and there's blue, and then there's everything else. Okay, it's known basically as a mixed biliary, and that will include kind of like different colored eyes, gray eyes, and so on and so forth. And straight away that tells a huge amount about a person. Like straight away you'd have just a full consultation on an eye color. But underneath that, there's 13 sub-constitutions, and that will give you your personality traits. That will give you your weaknesses and your strengths. Because iridology, in 2 words, is an inherited predisposition. So inherited just means you've had parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, great, all the way back. And a predisposition just means you've inherited a strength or a weakness in an organ or energy field. Now, you have 2 markings of note in your eye, okay? One is a lacuna, which is an opening. Lacuna is a Latin word for lake. And it's just an opening, and that's your inherited mark, okay? That's what you've got from your ancestors. And the other one is a pigmentation. And the pigmentation is what you've done, the errors that you've made. Okay. So we work with them. And obviously the pigmentation will bring on colors. And in a blue eye, it's so much easier to see, but they do come out in brown eyes as well. So you'll work with that. You look for imbalances within the organ and the energy fields. Because like we work mainly like just, you know, take for example, the endocrine system, okay, which is your glandular system, which is also your hormonal system, which is the key to emotional well-being. An imbalance in one organ in the endocrine system may not necessarily appear in that organ, but it will appear in a different organ throughout the endocrine system. Now, in the eye, you will find a lot of times that's on an axis. So take, for example, the ovaries, the testes are on an axis to the thyroid. So kind of like an imbalance in that organ might result in your thyroid being out. So you actually have to work for that. And it's a skill. And this is where iridology becomes an art. And this is where you kind of like learn an awful lot from doing more and more and more consultations. So it is the markings within iridology in your eye that kind of like.
So then Barry, I've got to stop you and I've got to ask you the question. How do we find cause versus effect? Because as a chiropractor, that's my number one conversation of what is the symptom that the person's coming to see me for, and what was the cause of that? So in terms of your iridology, how are you differentiating that? When you're seeing the person's eye, you're seeing the potential problems. What is cause? What is effect?
Okay, well, that's why a consultation will generally be a minimum of an hour long, or 2 to 3 hours, or 2 to 3 consultations, because there is kind of like, we'd have to look at their diet, we have to look at their lifestyle, we have to look at kind of like all the things that we're consuming. So if there is an inherited predisposition, okay, we can talk about like an inherited predisposition of like heart coming from the father because the father worked in the coal mine, or he was a 40 cigarette a day smoker. Okay, well then you may have inherited a weakness. So we work on building up the heart, and we don't just build up the heart in the physical. Please do some exercise. Please take the herbs related to heart health, but also start loving yourself, because again, responsibility and honesty. And one of the biggest issues we have in this world is that we don't love ourselves enough. We are told that it's an ego-based love, or it's wrong, but you know, kind of like we look for what's causing the imbalance in your emotion, why you don't have enough. Like, you know, take for example, another ailment which is huge these days is diabetes. And diabetes is about sweetness, okay? And it's a pancreatic thing. And the emotions associated with the pancreas is bitterness and sweetness. So why are you looking for so much sweetness from outside? Why do you not have enough sweetness on the inside? Why do you not kind of like love yourself enough? Why do you not show yourself enough love, enough sweetness that you need 50 grams of sugar a day, that you need to eat cat food all day, every day, just to feed? Like, what is your relationship with food? Why do you feed yourself such rubbish? Like, why do you watch the same show over and over and over again on Netflix? And to me, that's the cause. Yes.
Is this the way you're consulting with people, like you're doing that with us? Is this how you approach your consultations?
Within the constitution of your iris, it will give an indication of how you talk to people. Like, you know, from the very, very strong iris to neurogenic, you have to be blunt or it doesn't go in. You have to say, this is awful. What are you doing? You know, this is better. To kind of like the more weaker kind of like iris types, constitutions, where you basically have to hold their hands and say, listen, we'll just talk about one thing today and everything will be fine. And, you know, there's nothing but lollipops and unicorns in this world, and we'll do this together. Okay, so, you know, kind of like, and I'm not for an awful lot of people, okay, because you know, the main thing I throw at people is you are responsible for you. I can't, if your eyes suggest,
I can't imagine, Barry, you talking about unicorns and rainbows and holding people's hands and talking them through. I can't understand.
There is a very, very sensitive side to me that you have not seen yet, Dr. Travis.
I'm waiting.
Yeah, no, really. Someday I'll show it to you. Hey, someday. Maybe not soon, but someday. So like I give people homework, you know, kind of like if people come to see me and they kind of like, the thing about it is, if your eyes suggest or present to me that you're allergic to gluten, or you have a lactose intolerance, and you decide that you do not want to give up gluten and you do not want to stop taking dairy, there is nothing I can do. You know, the problems that these are causing in the body, both emotionally, mentally, and physically, and to an extent spiritually, and you refuse to give them up because of why, I don't know, because you're emotional bound to it, because you're tied to it. Or you can go to a doctor and you can get your symptoms removed by a pill, because I don't really give pills. I never do, like I'm a herbalist. But the way I work is that if you're not willing to give up what made you sick, there's very little I can do for you. What made you sick will not make you better. It's as simple as that.
Oh, Barry, let's dive into that. If you don't want to
Okay.
give up what made you sick, why do people not want to give up what made them sick?
They have an addiction to who that makes them, as far as I'm concerned. Like, people will present their illness before they present themselves. Like, you see people, hello, I've got cancer, my name is Barry. So they look for sympathy, they look for something to talk about. It's almost ego driven, that there's something wrong with them, that they can't be right. This world has taken away people's power. Okay. And for me, this is where I try to work. I try to re-empower people in understanding that you can heal yourself. Our body is extraordinary. It really, really is extraordinary. There's this Tibetan proverb that says, there's no such thing as an incurable person. There's only incurable diseases. There's only incurable people. And I've never heard something more profound in my life, and so true. We are told that our body cannot heal. Now, one of my favorite people in the world is a chiropractor, is Dr. Joe Dispenza. And I listen to him on a daily basis. I do his meditations, and I've got like his books, and I've kind of watched all his videos. It's the only reason why I have Gaia TV, is to actually watch him on that. And he has healed himself from kind of like where the doctors told him he'd never walk again. And a meditation is a key part to my healing practice. Okay, it really is. And that's just getting in touch with yourself, or also not losing yourself in like a healing, and trusting the process, and trusting everything that kind of like that you can do right, because the world is set up to everything we can do wrong.
When we talk about meditation, Barry, I mean, I know a lot of people, they will say, but I can't meditate. I've tried and it just doesn't work for me.
They don't realize how close they are to actually getting that right, because when they realize that they can't meditate, they're actually on the right track. Because when they realize that their thoughts are running amok in their head, they're actually becoming aware that their thoughts are running amok. So they're actually aware of that whole fact that my head has gone crazy, and my head has gone crazy, and I can't do it, and I can't do it. And this is where you're meant to be. This is the first step to meditation, is the realization that you have this thought process going on. Like, to me, the meditation, nobody can stop their mind unless you're kind of like Buddha. Nobody can really stop your mind. But what you can do is you can recognize your thought comes in, you can stop, you can hold a sense of a moment of absolute peace, and another thought will come in. But the idea is that that moment between the first thought appearing, and you're letting it go, and the second thought coming in, that's where the absolute eternal now is. And that's where all healing takes place. And that's where you can change yourself. That is truly what you're looking for, the moments between thoughts, and you want to just expand them. And if your first moment is 1 second.
That's applicable from now onwards for everyone on this call.
I think so. If you're not willing to put, like, people's going to say, oh, I can't meditate. Like, why don't you try meditating for 4 minutes a day? That's all, 4 minutes a day. It's 1/15 of an hour, and an hour is 4% of your day. If you cannot give that to yourself, well, then you have to ask yourself the question, why? Like, I drive people mad in consultation sometimes, because I just sit there going, why? And they throw excuse after excuse after excuse after excuse at me, and I just go, why? Like bullshit?
Barry,
why?
I've got some really interesting questions from some of the participants on the call. So let's go through it. Can you get a picture of an eye and diagnose from that, or do you prefer to see the person face to face for diagnosis? I think a lot of people now,
not at all.
COVID crazy, are perhaps asking this question.
Okay, not at all. I have clients in Texas, Finland, Cyprus. I've clients all over the world, and they've taken pictures with iPhones or Samsungs, I'm sure, as well. I'm not selling anything, but as long as the
iPhone's much better, right?
I believe so, yes. So no, you don't. Look, I prefer to meet people, because I also work on an intuitive, energetic level. So kind of like, but it's not essential, because obviously if I got a client in Texas, I just can't travel to Texas and come back again and see someone the next day. Like, if I got someone in Finland, that's also like, how am I going to get there? You couldn't get further away basically in South Africa. So
someone,
no, I don't.
Someone else asked, how do you see these traumas, physical, emotional, chemical, in the eye? Pause. And someone else said, if someone had to break a bone, would there be a speck in the eye where the person had hurt themselves? So try and tie those two
Yes,
questions together.
your iris generally kind of, the scar tissue shows up very, very quickly, very easily in your iris. So bone breaks and stuff like that. And I've also come to the conclusion that you can get emotional scarring. So if you look at the iris like this and you have the center part, things generally run out from the center. So when you see a line that runs across, these lines that run out are called stroma. So if you see a line that runs across, it's an indication of scar tissue. So bone breaks are boom, easy. Hysterectomies, boom, always. Okay. So they always come up, stuff like that. Okay. Amputations are fairly obvious. You don't have to look at someone's eyes to see they've lost an appendage.
I can imagine that people are going to be opening their eyes wide, trying to take pictures of it tonight. Just make sure that the flash is not on, because we don't want to blind each other now.
Never self-diagnose through iridology. I did that once and I realized I died 4 days earlier.
Okay, Barry, next question. Do these people who are struggling to face the truth keep feeding themselves in a negative way and further circle themselves into that negative way? So would they still be able to be helped? Because a lot of it could be coming from the negative cycle of negative ego. And I'm just going to let you know, this is my associate asking this question. So I think she's asked a really good question. Did you get the question, Barry?
Yeah, yes. And straight away, I directed to a book called A New Earth by Edgar Tolle, or another book called The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, to read either one of those two books if that's an issue. But however, people who suffer in that cycle, that's the last book they'd ever want to read, because you have to get into the core, the absolute core, and most of it comes from childhood. Like, you have to go back there. You have to go back between the ages of 0 and 7, where you're in a theta brainwave and all our programming is put in there. So we have to teach people how to unprogram and to actually reprogram into a positive way, to let them know that you will have good and bad, to let them know that you'll have ups and downs, you'll have great days, bad days. That is a cycle, but it will always be worth it. It will always be worth it. But you're like, again, the iris will give an indication of how you approach that consultation with somebody, because, again, you got to stress with people that the body can heal only if you wanted to. Only if you're in that position. So you got to understand why you got to try and get people to understand why they all eat crap food, why they go for comfort food, why they always pick the wrong partners, why they look at the wrong, like, negative stuff on socialist media, why they always do that, where their addictive tendencies are, and help them out of that. But there is help. Everybody is helpable as such.
And I mean, you're mentioning about the sort of pre-7 years of age and that ongoing programming. Certainly that then opens up a question of doing consultations with people early on to guide that process of entrainment.
It would be ideal. It would be absolutely perfect. It really would be. That would be, sure. I think we would take away so many adolescent and adult and old age, because there was a great book wrote about kind of like by an Australian nurse about the 5 biggest regrets people had when they were dying, and most of them were just kind of like things that we should be able to do that we just didn't have, like the cojones to step up to the plate and do that. We didn't have we knew there was something bigger. We knew the world was more than just a materialistic kind of Rolex watches and Bugattis. But we didn't. We chased a materialistic dream and we lost ourselves. So to bring somebody back to reality, to bring them back to kind of center, to bring them back to spirit, to source, to God, is, to me, kind of like the earlier you can start with that. Now, I'm not a religious person, even though I was dragged up Catholic in Ireland. But I do believe in a spirituality part of.
But I mean, Barry, this comes back to what you said at the beginning of knowing what is your purpose, knowing what is your plan, knowing what it is that you're interested in, knowing what it is that you're going after. I think that's
it's one of the
fundamental.
It's one of the things, like I said, I give people homework, and like one of the things I do is like write your ideal life. Absolutely. Write it down as like you already live it. You actually have it. And now write a list of where you are in life and see where the two of them join up. And then the third list is of how you're going to change to bring it into your ideal life. And, you know, kind of like another thing I do is I ask people to write out a list of things they love about themselves. It's amazing how many people can't write out things they love about themselves, but they can write out lists and pages and absolute like books of things they hate about themselves. And it's absolutely extraordinary that people can do that, that people can actually write out so much negative cack about themselves, but they find it so difficult to be able to write out things they love about themselves. Or I'll ask my husband, or I'll ask my wife, or I'll ask the kids. No, ask yourself. Get in touch with you. Find yourself, find the person you are meant to be, and actually get them to do it with you. Become your own friend. Like, love yourself is key, like absolutely key.
Barry, just to give you a time check, we've got 8 minutes left, and for everyone on the call, as soon as the time's up, it's time's up. Goodbye. So I want to thank everyone for attending so far. If you're not on my broadcast list, please will you send me a message? I'm going to type my number in the chat section. Send me a list. I'll add you to the broadcast list so that you can get further information of further talks. And when this recording is out, you'll get that notice. But Barry, I've got a nice question here. Have you assisted patients with cancer? My question would be a little bit further. You know, what are the sort of main reasons that people consult with you?
Unfortunately, one of the main reasons people consult with me is they've given up on doctors. Okay, now we touched on this earlier, and there's a growing number of people I know who have given up on doctors because they just, like, you go to a doctor, you could charge $600 to be sent to a specialist who will charge you maybe 20,000 rand, who will send you to get tests and get results, and then you'll be on medication for life. So an awful lot of people come to me when doctors can't do anything for them. So they say kind of like, I'm really, really sorry, you have stage 4 cancer, you have 6 months to live. And that's, to me, is a death sentence. That to me is like an awful lot of people have doctors on such pedestals that they believe that, they actually believe it. So then it's a huge program about kind of like getting back to kind of like believing yourself. And, you know, the question is, do you want to die? No, of course not. Okay, so what are you willing to give up? What are you willing to change? Like, when was the last time, like, you had a doctor on last week and he was a breath of fresh air. He actually was amazing. He was like truly, truly extraordinary.
Yeah, if
know,
anyone missed Dr. Badat, he was incredible, and his recording will be out in maybe a month from now.
He really was. Guys, if you haven't seen it last week's, really watch that. But he's a doctor of 1 in 1,000. Like, you know, doctors will take your blood pressure and they'll take your heart rate, but none of them will ask you about your lifestyle, your exercise, your diet, like your thinking process, what you watch on television. Do you meditate? Do you love yourself? Do you put any energy into yourself? So cancer is as far as I'm concerned, very, very curable. It really, really is. But you have to be willing to cure yourself. Because if I told you to go on a raw food, living food, vegan diet, and you have to exercise and you have to meditate, and you go, Jesus, that's too hard. Well, then the question goes back to you, do you want to die? You know, kind of like, you know, if you're not willing to do all of these things that will save your life, you got to ask the question is, do you want to live or do you want to die? Like, you know, if you're eating kind of like, if you're consuming 15 pounds of butter and 2 cows a day with 15 cups of coffee with 10 sugars in them, and you're doing no exercise and you hate everyone, you hate your life, of course you're going to have still stuff like cancer. Okay, but unless you're willing to change that, unless you actually, because cancer doesn't take place, like rarely, there are instances, but generally kind of speaking, cancer is a chronic illness. It can take 10 years to develop in the body. So it's 10 years of bad diet, bad thinking, bad emotions, no spiritual practice, no meditation, no prayer. It takes that long. Cancer, like there is cases, like if you swim in Fukushima, you will probably come out with cancer straight away. But you know, you like bone cancer can develop very, very quickly. But you can reverse anything. There is no such thing.
And how long, Barry? Maybe this is you know, how long's a piece of string, but how long does it take for someone to reverse what they've got?
In naturally, like in college where I learned, one of my lecturers, one of my more favorite lecturers, turned around and said, kind of like, for every year that you're out of balance or doing something wrong, it will generally take a month to reverse that. So kind of like you have to look at.
I speak about that in chiropractic. 1 month for every year of damage.
Okay, so I thought Dr. Gascoigne actually made that up, so maybe he didn't. You fraud! I'm going to phone him up and tell him to.
Barry, we've got 4 minutes left. Let's go to the two important questions for me. How would
Yes.
you like the future of healthcare to look? How would you like the future of healthcare to look? And number two, how do we move in that direction? Thank you, everyone, for attending the talk. As soon as the time ends, thank you very much. God bless you. Barry, there we go.
Okay, Dr. Travers, what I think we have to realize is how I see the future of medicine going is a two-pronged, okay? One thing is we're coming into the age of Aquarius, okay? Or we're in the age of Aquarius. And that is about humanity taking control of its destiny, okay? A revelation of truth, an increase in consciousness. But it's also about a massive increase in technology. And, you know, technology can be, the advancement in technology for medical purposes can be amazing, for prosthetics, for laser surgery, for all types of operations. But it can also be used very, very badly. Now, if anybody's aware of the likes of Klaus Schwab on this planet, he would turn us into the Borg, okay? He would turn us into transhumans, and he would rob us of our souls, okay? So it has to be very, very careful. So it can go either way, that we actually end up just being computerized, automated kind of android Borgs, or it's going to be I think, again, this is the way I would love to see it, and I'm not giving up on this belief, that a lot of people return to energy healing. They will return to the earth. They will return to healers, shamans. They will turn to mediums. They will turn to clairvoyance. They will turn to Reiki. They will return to homeopathy. They will return to herbal medicine. They will return to the energies and the medicines of the earth. They will realize that things like a chiropractor is one of my favorite people in the world is a chiropractor, and it's not you, it's your wife. Okay. Right. That's Dr. Joe. But chiropractors as well, they fall into that because you realign energy. You help people actually, because remember, every emotion in the body and every feeling in the body travels through your spine to the brain for processing. So spinal health is key to good health, because if the message ain't getting from the organ to the brain, there's going to be problems. There really is going to be problems. But to me, like things like love is a medicine, okay? The earth is love, okay? Our energy is love, and we need to return to that, okay? But we have to be careful kind of like where we're going. So I think there could be a split. I think there could be a thing that people start going back to nature and going back to kind of like the healers of the world, chiropractors and herbalists. And then, but there will be people who will go towards the kind of like implementation of like just,
and if you had
to me, there's people.
If you had to give one thing for the people on the talk tonight for them to start with today, what would that be?
Self-worth, self-love, okay? Actually start working on, because remember, your stomach is where you hold your sense of self-value. So where you put in, what you put in there will actually dictate how you feel about yourself, but it doesn't make anything unless you put it in with love and say, do you know what? You wake up every morning, you turn around and you go, I am a wonderful, amazing, unique, extraordinary, beautiful human being, and I deserve the very, very best in this world. And that starts with happiness. You do meditation and you do self-worth, and then you obviously check your diet, okay? You know, you go into a shop and you see a health food section. What the hell is everything else? Go to that health food section. Eat the stuff that you think you don't like, because it is actually very, very tasty. Start loving yourself, and that's the one thing that I would tell people to do. Get over yourself, start loving yourself. Eat, sleep well, shit, repeat on a daily basis. That's what you need to do, okay?
Barry, I got to tell you, my friend, we're less than a minute left. I love you. Okay. Thank you very much for tonight.
There's one thing, okay? In this world where we have people coming in and are telling us it's about the Great Reset, if this is a game of poker, we raise you. You